Okay, we have these lines of these three descriptions. Okay. Now I made a comment here. You have formulas, which you might or might not remember. So you did this by formulas. And it's good that you remember the formulas. Okay. If you got a really good memory for formulas, maybe you can remember them for a long time. I wouldn't rely on memorizing the formulas, though, for two reasons. One is you're much less likely to remember the formulas if you don't understand what they mean. And what they mean you get by being able to draw the pictures. So I do recommend you always start problems of this nature with the pictures. Now, if you're doing a homework assignment, do pictures for every different kind of problem you get. But, there's three different kinds of problems here. You're given 2 points, or here you're given a point and a slope. And here you're given a slope. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're given a point and a slope, but the point is the y-intercept. Here you're given a point that isn't the y-intercept and a slope. In each of those cases, it's easy to find the equation of the line if you remember how, and it's easy enough to draw a picture. I say that you won't understand the formula well enough. You won't understand the formulas, plural, because it's them, formulas well enough to rely on them. Okay? Also, you won't be developing the necessary problem solving skills. And when I say necessary, you're moving into the world of AI, and I'm sure you're aware of it. You got to be able to do something AI can't do, which is think. So what I said here, you won't be developing necessary problem solving skills. Think AI, period. AI can't. But it can sure act like it, and it can sure do things that beat the heck out of what a human being can do. What a human being can do is evaluate the output of AI to see if it makes sense. Now, it's probably going to, and then even more so in the future, but you got to develop some critical faculties, and you've also got to figure out what you can use AI to do. Now, I'm not going to teach you about AI or AI prompting or anything. I played around with ChatGPT a couple of years ago when it first came out and got discussed. And when I asked it to give me 10 linear equations, I told it what form to put them in, gave me 10 perfectly good linear equations, and then give me the solutions. And none of the solutions were right. It's stupid, okay? And it still is, it's mathematics, but that's going to change. Okay. On the other hand, I could ask it really deep graduate level, research level questions, and it was very good. And some of those questions, the answers were over my head. But I know enough to think that it was probably good. It had the right form. It made sense in terms of what I did understand, but it was out of my field. And, I'm about 50 years out of my field. So, but I still remember a lot. So okay, anyhow, the point is, you ask it really advanced stuff, it does a good job. You ask it really simple Algebra 1 stuff, and it'll screw it up. Probably not as bad as it did 2 years ago, but you still can't trust it. Now you ask, how do I solve a problem where I've got to find an equation of a straight line? It'll probably tell you, well, there are 3 cases. You're given 2 points, given a point and a y-intercept, or you're given a point that's not the y-intercept and the slope. That's a slope and a y-intercept here. Okay, so how do you approach that? How do you first sketch a picture? Let's set this over here out of the way. Consider the first line, okay? Okay, we're given the points -4, 3, and 7, -5. So you go ahead I wouldn't sketch a set of X and Y axes until I locate the points. So I'm going to say this point's in the line X equals -4, in the line Y equals 3. Fair enough? And so there's a point. You don't have to have a coordinate system that marks up to from 0 up to 100 on each one of them. Well, nobody goes 0 to 100. You don't know what scale to use on your graph until you have your information. Now you can look at the information and see what might make sense. So that's okay. But I say, let's just say, okay, here's 7, -5. And we can notice that these 2 points are 11 units apart. Okay, so now we have some scale for the horizontal. And then 7, -5, well, from 3 down to -5 is -8. This point's going to have to be 8 units lower than the Y equals 3 line. So we're going to do something like this, Y equals -5. So if this is 11, this might be 8. That at least makes some sense. This is a little less than this. It's more than half. So makes a certain amount of sense to scale the graph as I've done here. And we've got the 2 points. Now, where's the x-axis? Well, it's 4 units to the right of x equals -4. And this is 11 units. So if this is 11, half of that's here, that's about 5.5. 4 would be about this far. So I would say the x-axis, which is a line, the y-axis, I'm sorry, which is a line x equals 0, should be about here. So I'm going to go ahead and make most of that line solid and say that's my y-axis. Then between 3 and -5, well, halfway from 3 to -5 would be -1. So it's going to be a little less than halfway from here down to here. So I put my line y equals 0 here. But of course, the y equals 0 line is the x-axis. So I'll label that as the x-axis. Now I've got my coordinate axes. I recommend that you do something much like this because it gets you more familiar with the coordinate plane. You can think in terms of the numbers, you can think in terms of the distances and so forth, and everything makes a lot more sense. And it's not difficult if you just, look at what I did. If it doesn't make total sense to you right now, it's good to look back. It's only going to take you maybe 3 minutes if you open the video and go a couple of minutes into, you just click here, click here, click here. Okay, there's the picture. Let's back up. Let's get to the explanation. Okay. All right. So then our line is going to be like this. Now, we want to figure out the slope. Okay. So what we can do is find the slope. Okay, well, that's not difficult to do. You've been paying attention, the slope is how far we go over from the leftmost point and how far we go up from the rightmost point. Of course, we're going down, so the up is going to be negative. So this distance is the run. It equals 7 minus -4. And that's 11. This is the rise equals, I labeled my x-axis in an inconvenient place. Anywhere you label it, it's going to be inconvenient. But rise equals what? It's where you end up with minus where you start at. -5 minus 3, which is -8. I'll still label my x-axis, but it's going to be a lot smaller. And of course, you try to organize your picture and arrange it so you can label everything. Okay? And I didn't do that. I just slopped points down and stuff. Didn't leave myself enough room to the right. If you start on the left side of your paper, that won't be a problem, but then you're going to need something to label on the left. So it's an art figuring out how to structure a graph with the space you have. My advice is just start sort of in the middle of the page and leave yourself plenty of room. All right, anyhow, we got the rise, we got the run. So I'm going to say the slope equals rise divided by run. I recommend that you write this out to keep reminding yourself what's going on here. And so you started with these two arrows before you even drew the line. That was good. Okay. But if you drew the line or the points first and drew the arrows up in any order, that would be a good way to do it. Okay. So slope is rise over run. Well, that's -8 over 11. So what I'm going to do, I don't want to have to look all over the place to find my information, even though the slope is right here. So if I'm looking at this segment, I'm pretty sure I can see where the slope is. I'm going to actually put it here, put a box around it so I can see everything I need right there. I'm also going to put the coordinates of my points in here. Well, I've already got them. I have to use an arrow there. And I don't think I labeled this one, so I better do that. That's -4, 3. So now I know what my points are. I know what lines intersect, what horizontal and vertical lines intersect in order to do those points. I know, among other things, that the rise is the distance from this y = 3 line down to the y = -5 line. So you subtract the y coordinates to get the numerator, which is your rise. And that the distance or displacement from here to here is from -4 to 7, which is a displacement of 11 units, and that's your run. Okay? And that's the distance between this line and this line. I said distance between this line and this line. It's actually the displacement from this line to this line. Remember, we always think of going from this point to this point. I'll say always from left to right. So these arrows point in the direction of your path from this point to this point along horizontal and vertical lines. If you bring all that together, you'll have a picture. And if you use it every time you do one of these problems, the picture is likely to stay with you. Now, of course, then you have a test and you better review that picture. Make sure it comes back into your mind and is nice and fresh so you get into the test and relieve enough of the test anxiety to know that, okay, I know I can do that picture. And I know I can translate that picture into maybe directly into the equation of the line and maybe into the formula and confirm the formula and make sense of everything. Okay, so you find the slope. We just did that. Then you find the y-intercept b. Now, how do you do that? Well, you know, if we want to use y = mx plus b, well, we can do that. We can write y = mx plus b. M equals -8 over 11. What else do we know that allows us to find b? Well, if we know m and x and y, we can find b. We know m. And actually, there are 2 points that we could use that have X and Y values, right? This point's on the line. So if I plug 7, -5 in here into this, along with the -8/11s, I'm going to get B. Well, let's do that. Okay. Okay, you see what I've done is I've got M and X and Y, which I plug in for M and X and Y here. And I get a very simple equation to solve for B. Now there's a formula you can use, and I'll solve it using the formula too. And it's quicker and easier, but you don't learn as much. Because something you have to learn here is how you can substitute information that you have into the form of an equation and evaluate whatever's not known in that equation. And we're going to do more of that. Sometimes there are two things that aren't known and we need two equations. Well, that comes up a little bit later, but we want to be able to do it right now. So we have this equation. We multiply both sides by 11. Multiply 11 by this side, 11 by this whole side. Notice I almost put a parenthesis here because I knew I was going to have to do a closed parenthesis, but that wouldn't have made sense because the whole side has to be multiplied by 11. So that gives us -55 equals this 11. Well, I'm going to write it out. 11 times -8/11 times 7 plus 11b. Now I can do the arithmetic here. I'll make this 11 and 11/1, so we can clearly see that this 11's in the denominator of what we get if we multiply numerators. And maybe I better make that 7 a 7/1. How about that? So if I multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators, I'm going to have a factor of 11 in the denominator and a factor of 11 in the numerator. It's important to understand that statement so you understand what you're doing. Now that 11 doesn't look very good. Now it's smeared and it looks even worse, but we're going to live with that. Okay, so we end up with -8 times 7 and then plus 11b. So -55 equals -56 plus 11b. So b is really close to 0. Does that match my picture? Now, we haven't seen it. B is going to be 1 over 11. Okay. Is my b value here, the y coordinate when I cross the y-axis, is it close to 0? Yeah, probably not quite as close as this is going to be. Well, I solve, I add the equation 56 equals 56 to both sides. I get 1 equals 11b. So 11b equals 1. There's a step I kind of skipped there where I divide both sides by 11, but that's how you solve the equation. B equals 1/11. Does this make sense? This is your y-intercept. Y-intercept occurs when x equals 0. So this point should be 0, 1/11. Right here, there's your y-intercept. That's a question mark. And that looks pretty good. So having done the picture and gone through all these details, I confirm the picture. Now, you probably don't want to go through all those details every time you solve a problem like this, but you should do it several times. Okay? It says you probably aren't going to be assigned that many problems, although you ought to do more problems than you're assigned, especially near test time. And I'll give you sample problems. Yeah, you can do that. So the equation is so we check. Okay, I'm losing this side of the board just a little bit. So got it now? Okay. So again, y equals -8/11x plus 1/11. We're going to check. We have the point -4, 3 that we didn't use in calculating the equation. And y equals 3 when x equals -4. Don't mix them up like I just did. -4 times 3 should equal -8/11 of -4 plus 1/11. Well, you work this out. You first multiply everything by 11. I don't have room to write it all out, but it's much like this. We get -4 times 3 is -12, and everybody knows that 11 times 12 is 132. And we don't get equality. That's a little bit strange because we have the right slope and the right intercept. So I must have done something wrong when I substituted. So maybe I can't do arithmetic anymore, but number comes out a lot bigger than those numbers. What did I do wrong? I'm not going to work it out. Because I'm going to go ahead and solve this equation with a formula and see if it matches the equation that I got here. That's negative. That's negative. And when I added these, I got something that made perfect sense. So this thing should go through -4, 3. And it's way off. I do that step just to make sure I got -11. I got 11 times -4 times -3 equals -8 times -4 plus 1. I multiply everything in this equation by 11. The 11 will be divided by the 11 in the denominator in each case over here. And I still get 132 equals 32 plus 1. This stands for what's this foolishness? Okay, not that other thing people often say, sometimes understandably. But what's going on here? I don't know. I'm obviously completely stumped as to what's going on, but I know how to check it. So we're going to move over just a little bit. Let's use the formula, which says I like this form. M equals y minus y1 over x minus x1, which can be expanded. But I like to start with this rather than I'm going to use this because it's a simple statement. It just says the slope is rise over run. Okay. This is a rise between x1, y1, and any point xy on the line. So we get negative 8/11, which I'm pretty sure of, equals y minus y1. Okay, well, y1 it was -5, but I'm going to use 3 this time. I'm going to use this point. So I used point -4, 3. Get or negative 8/11 equals y minus 3 over x plus 4. If I multiply both sides by 11 and by x plus 4, this gives me -8 times x plus 4 equals 11 times y minus 3. It's safe to use that cross multiply thing here because you just got numerator over denominator and numerator over denominator, okay? So if you want to use that trick, just don't use it if you got plus something on one of the sides because it's not going to work. But for expedience, I'm going to do this. I get negative 8x minus 32 equals 11y minus 44, 33. I just multiplied by 4 and I still had 4 in my brain. Okay, I can add 33 to both sides, which will give me 1 here. And I can add 8x to both sides. Uh-oh. No, I cannot. I can add 8x to both sides. So anyhow, if I add 33 to both sides and rearrange it, I get y equals 11y equals negative 8x plus 1. I divide both sides by 11 and I get y equals negative 8 over 11y plus 1 over 11. So the formula, if you do all the steps right, and I didn't include all the steps, but the formula agrees completely with what I got over here. So I'm doing something really dumb here. I double checked it. X is -4, y is 3. X is -4, y is 3. Ah, you see the dumb thing I did. This side is just y. It's not -4 times y. Okay, so it's 3 equals this. And then it's 11 times -3, which gives me -33 equals, it's 11 times 3, it's positive 33, equals 32 plus 1. and this is okay. You saw me do a bonehead thing here. I put a 4 here without thinking. There's no reason to put a 4 there because this side should just be y. And the y coordinate of the point that we're using, -4, 3, is just 3, not -4 times 3. I put a -4 in there for no good reason at all. So that's okay, and it checks out. Now, among other things, I got to solve the problem using the formula, which is a perfectly good formula, okay? And there are 3 different forms that formula could be in, so if you want to memorize one of those forms, it can be rearranged to the other. All I do to get this form here is multiply both sides by x minus x1. And I get an x minus x1 on this side, so I've got m times x minus x1. And that leaves me a y minus y1 on this side. So it's straightforward. You should understand that out. All right, well, I have no idea what time it is, but I'm going to pause video for a minute and see how we're doing. Yeah, we got almost 30 minutes to go yet. No, we don't want to stop recording. Hit the wrong button. Okay, so it's still recording. That's all right. Now we're going to go to the second problem, which is the easiest algebraically. So let's see how that works. Second problem, the slope is 5/8. Y-intercept is at 0, -3. Okay, well, no slope, which we always use, we always denote by m unless we've got several different equations of different slopes. And it would use like m1, m2, m3. But we know the slope m. And the y-intercept b. We substitute the known values of m and b. All we have to do is notice that 0, -3 is the y-intercept, which you will if you sketch the thing. And we get y equals 5/8. And just 5/8 x. I'm not substituting anything there. Sorry, my reflex is a little messed up, I guess. 5/8 x plus b, which is -3, or just y equals 5/8 x minus 3. So that one was a gimme. If you know the slope-intercept form, which is the first thing talked about last time, okay? And if you were to draw a picture, you would know that the slope is 5/8 and the x-intercept is -3. Still, it's a little bit instructive to look at the picture. So here we go. What do we know? Well, we know the y-intercept is that y equals -3. And we know that's the y-intercept, so we know that wherever the y-axis is, might as well put it here as anywhere. And maybe we make just a little sketch before we make a big one, okay? But the y-intercept is here. That says if the run is 8, the rise is 5. Because the slope is the rise divided by the run. So that means we can draw a line here of 8 units. And a rise of 5 units. And we don't calculate those, we observe those from the given slope, and we get a point on the graph, and it looks like this. Now we could find the equation or the coordinates of this point. I mean, this point is 0, -3, and this point is what? 8, because we go from x equals 0 to x equals 8. So this is the line x equals 8. And this line here is y equals -3 plus 5 equals 2. So this point has coordinates 8, 2. And we can do more about that. We could plug x equals 8 into this. And if x is 8, then this 8 will divide this 8, leaving us 5. And 5 minus 3 is 2. That confirms the coordinates of this point and pretty well confirms that we have the right equation. And the whole point of confirming things is to think a little bit critically about what we do, because you're almost certainly going to be dealing with AI in your life a whole lot, and you really have to be able to think critically. So that's one reason I'm advising you think through all these details. Number one, because you're going to do better on the test, or you're likely to do better on the test, unless you don't think through the details thoroughly and let them confuse you. Sort through the details, but just basically understand you got a picture with every equation, and there's a form for the equation that you can do without even having the picture. You do both. It's like having binocular vision as opposed to monocular, meaning I think I can see enough of the board. I don't. Now things are getting dangerous. I'm going to move the board. They're really dangerous because these boards aren't that heavy. Likely not to put me in the hospital for more than a week or two and get over that. So and I said 0.1 -2. Okay. Well, I would start with a picture. I'd start with x equals 1, y equals -2. Knowing that the x-axis is at 0, well, I don't want to do that just yet. I've got this. I've got the slope. It's -8 over 11. That means if I go over 11, I can use a rise of -8. And now I have a straight line with a slope of -8 over 11 that I didn't even have to calculate because I was so nice to myself that I gave myself a slope. I try to be nice to you too. And so if you know a point and a slope, here's your picture. Now, if your slope is 1/2, well, you can go over 1 and up 2. But you go over 10 and up 20 if you want to, as long as you go up twice as far. I did that wrong. You can go over, if its slope is 1/2, you can go over 2 and up 1, or over 10 and up 20, whatever, as long as your rise is, I did it wrong again, over 20 and up 10, but as long as your rise is half as big as your run is, the slope is 1/2. Okay, just as an example. Now, in this case, slope is -8/11, so we use a run of 11 and a rise of -8. And we can figure out what this point is. This point is, well, first of all, this point is 1, -2. And I'm getting my numbers all mixed up because I'm writing them down without thinking. -11, because I'm at x equals 1 here. This one has to be x equals 12. Okay, from 1 to 12 is 11. 1 plus 11, of course, is going to give me 12. The rise is going to be -8, so it's -2 minus 8. So that I'd have a line here. This line would be y equals -2 minus 8 equals -10. Okay, well, the equation is y equals mx plus b with m equals -8/11. And given x equals 1, y equals -2. So -2 equals -8/11 times 1 plus -2. Okay, we'll make it plus -2 into +2. Multiply both sides by 11. We get -22 on this side. Make sure that's visible. Can I see it? Camera's a little uncertain. I went out and ordered a new tripod, so next time it'll be pretty stable, but it's okay. And I didn't put my X in here, and I apologize. Let me rewrite that. Okay. We know that the slope is -8/11, that's m. We know the point 1, 2 is on the line, so when x equals 1, y equals 2, this gives us the equation -2 equals -8/11 times x plus -2, which we'll write as -2 equals -8/11 times 1 minus 2. I think I'm thinking clearly, but I'm doing some ignorant things here. Okay. Plugging this information into this equation, I don't have a number for B. What I'm doing is I'm solving for B. So that shouldn't be -2. There's no reason for making B equal to -2. Does that make sense? Now that I've confused you? Here's my equation. Here's my information. I put this in for M and I get the -8/11 in front of X. I put 1 in for X and I get a 1 where X goes. And I put in -2 for Y and I get -2 here. There's nothing to substitute for B, and it's a good thing because I have to solve for B in order to find the equation in the y-intercept. I multiply by 11, I get -2, -22 equals -8. Plus 11B. And I solve for B. I add 8 to both sides. I get -14 over here. And I get -14/11, which halfway makes sense. Now, if I complete this graph here by sketching the x-axis and the y-axis is x equals 0. If this distance is 11, this line has to be just 1 unit to the left of the x equals 1 line, so there's my y-axis. And my x-axis has to be 2 units above y equals -2. So if y equals -2 here, and the rise is 8 units, well, this distance is 8 units, then 1 unit will put it up about here. And there's my x-axis, which kind of obscures my note for the run, which I'll rewrite. So now that I've constructed my axes around my points and everything, I can see pretty clearly that the y-intercept is about here. It's between 0 and -2, closer to -2. Well, so is -14/11. It's -1 4/11. Okay. Now, if I was to locate that point a little more accurately, I think it might be just a tad bit higher than this one, but there we have the point 0, -14/11, and there's the equation of the line. Now, the process that I confused for you by doing a bonehead thing down here is very simple. We did it before. We got the form y equals mx plus b. We know m, and we have a point, so we know an x and a y. So we can easily write an equation that we can solve for b, assuming that we can do the steps correctly. Okay. So let me check the time, see where we are. Yeah, we got 13 minutes yet. Now, the thing I want to point out, and the method behind my madness when I made out these, when I chose the equations I was going to use, was this. You move this over so we can still see the solution here. I'm going to move this up here, but we still won't be able to see everything, so I'm just going to have to. Okay. This line has a slope that looks like this, and the slope is -8/11. This line has a slope that looks like this, and that slope is -8/11. Now, don't those lines look about parallel? Don't they look like they're kind of going in the same direction? Look at this one, and then look at this one. Now, my scales are a little bit different, but I use reasonably well estimated scales that are similar. So it looks like those lines are parallel. On the other hand, this line certainly isn't parallel to this one and isn't parallel to the first one we made. So we can observe that the lines the one we made down there was where did I write negative 8/11 x plus 1, but 1 over 11. And y equals the one we just did, which was negative 8/11. I just solved for b, and I don't remember what I got, so I better look. Negative 14/11. Well, they are parallel because they have the same slope. They have the same steepness, and the slope is negative in both cases, right? Okay. So if I wanted to find a line through, where's my original problem? I wanted to find a line through 1, -2 with a slope -8, with a, okay, through the point 1, -2, parallel to this line. I'd use the point 1, -2, and I'd use slope -8/11. Okay. So find a line through the point 5, -9. Parallel to the above lines. You would do exactly what we did here, but we'd be using 9, -5, -9, sorry, 5, -9 instead of 0, -3, or 5, -9 instead of 1, -2. We'd end up with a line parallel to this one. I don't have time to do a detailed graph, and I'm not going to actually do the plugging in, but it's simple. So I'll get you started. The solution is, yeah, we're going to solve -9, because that's your y coordinate here, equals m times x. M is the same as it is in a line that's parallel. Okay. Now, if you solve that, I think B comes out, well, we're going to have negative 99 here, and I'm going to have negative 40 here, which gives me 49. Negative 49. It's got to be negative. Yeah, it is. B equals negative 49 over 11. If I was to put that on this first graph, so the equation would be y equals negative 8/11 x minus 49 over 11. If I was to put that on this graph, well, negative 49 over 11 is a little over negative 4. It's negative 4 and 4/11. Okay. So I could impose that line in this graph. There's y equals 3. So y equals negative 4 would be down about here. So I don't want to do that too. Okay. Too dark. But if I did 11 this way, I'd be over on this line. And if I go negative 8, I'd be down here. Okay. So from this point, if I go, it's not the right point. That's the y-intercept is, I just did it. Where did I do it? And what did I get? Never mind. That is right. Okay. This line is supposed to go through 5, negative 9, and have slope negative 8 over 11. So if I drew a point here, went over 8, down 5, I would be at a new point here, which would be, well, the fractions. I don't want to try to write that down real quickly. Would I go through the point 5, negative 9? Well, 5 would be over here. Negative 9 might be here. So it kind of works out. Anyhow, one more thing is that, see what time it is. Yeah, we still got 4 minutes. If you gotta leave early, it's okay. There's one more thing to talk about though. What if we wanted a line perpendicular? Slope would be plus 11 over 8. Reciprocal of 8 over 11, we get 11 over 8. Meaning instead of going over 11 and negative 8, we go over 8 and up 11. And that would make the lines perpendicular. Rule. Parallel lines have the same slope. That's kind of obvious because the slope measures how steep the line is and whether it's going up or down, right? The slope's the same. You're going to go over the same amount and up or down the same amount from whatever point you start. Particular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. And open math will explain that, and I think it'll be fairly straightforward. So, you know 2 points, draw the picture. Use the equations, use the formulas. Try to reconcile everything you can. If you have a point and a slope, well, it's the same thing as if you have 2 points, but now you already know the slope, so you don't have to find the slope. You still use y equals mx plus b, and you plug the x and y coordinates and the slope, solve for b. Okay? If you know the slope and the intercept, you just pretty much have to write it down. Okay? So you have those 3 cases. I'll write it down quickly. You got a point and slope, you plug into y equals mx plus b. You know m, you know x and y, you solve for b, and et cetera as you write out the equation. 2 points. You find the slope, then you do this with one of the points. Okay. It's 12:22 or a minute over. Sorry for that. But